Work. I hope you've had a really good weekend, relaxed, been able to get outside a little bit, and that you're refreshed and ready to start today. Now, this week is all about poetry, and I'm really excited to do this unit because I don't think it's something we've done very much of this year, but generally it's something that you guys can be really creative with. There's lots of humour in this one and lots of personification, so it should be something really nice to do. Now, earlier in the week, or if you're watching this on Wednesday or Thursday, you'll have seen that there was a poem by Pi Corbett, which you can see on the screen now, called My Life is a Pencil. So I'm just going to read that poem out to you, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the features of it and how we're going to use it and the grid to write our own. So, My Life as a Pencil. The zip moved and light flooded in. I'd been lying in that case for days, not a soul to speak to, not a thing to do. Boy, was it good to see the sun again. And then she picked me up and held me, and for a moment I was filled with joy that warmed me right down to my lead. I've learnt that moments like this never last. The nightmare began as she turned me upside down, pressed my head hard against the paper, and horror of horrors, just scribbled away. Nothing productive, nothing useful, just doodling and drawing as I gradually grew flatter. I knew that soon I'd be taken to that dreadful place, the things all pencils fear, the sharpener. Well, as sure as day is day, she spun my head around inside it, shaved me down to the finest of points, stripped me of my wooden coat, but as I grew sharper, I also grew shorter. You know how it is. A short pencil won't last long. My days are numbered. This could be the last time we speak. I live in fear of that final resting place, the bin. So you can see here that there's loads of personification. I think this is a really funny poem, and it gives us a different perspective. We're not used to considering how a pencil feels when it's being used. So it's really interesting to be able to kind of think about that side of things. Now, you'll have seen that this is a grid we're going to use for this poetry unit. And the main areas we need to look at, as we know, are the structural features, the language features, and the grammar. Spelling, punctuation, handwriting are obviously essential as well, but as I said last time, they stay the same every unit, so we're really, really familiar with them. We probably don't need me to go through them as much. I will point out a little bit about punctuation, though, so you will have seen that there were lots of different examples of varied punctuation, and we can look at that as well when doing ours. In terms of structural features, a stanza is a verse. You can see that our poem that we've just looked at by Pi Corbett was sorted into 3 different stanzas, and free verse, the way the sentences flow into one another, the way it's structured, the punctuation used, it's not our typical style of writing. So in order to be able to get blue, we need to be able to do that. Links between stanzas to develop narrative, line breaks, and chosen form. I'm just going to click back to our poem here. We can see very clearly that all 3 of these stanzas are linked. It's almost chronological. It is chronological. It moves on from when the pencil's picked up all the way to when they're sharpened, right till the very end where they're worried that they're going to be thrown in the bin. And so where they've said here, I've learned that moments like this never last, that's leading us to say something's about to change. This magical moment in the morning where everything's wonderful is about to change, and the tone and atmosphere are going to be adapted. Here, where it says the things all pencils fear the sharpener, that means that we're about to find out why they fear it, what happens when they get there. So that's what it means when it says to you about linking them. Okay, this bit will all have come earlier in the week when you're looking at the different features and being able to look at the purpose and the impact on the author of those. So looking here, alliteration, rhythm or rhyme, it's being able to follow the poem in the same way. Something I find really useful to do, but you don't have to do, is I count how many syllables are in each line. I'll show you what I mean by that. Just gives me a bit of an idea of how to build up my own kind of structure to the poem. Personification, there is loads of that in the poem. The whole poem is about a pencil, and it's from their point of view. So that is essential. And if you did or have read the book, The Crayon, Day the Crayons Quit, that's much the same as this. It's very similar. It looks at the crayons and how they feel when they're being used each day. If you haven't had a chance to read that, pop onto YouTube. It's got the whole book read on there, and it's really lovely. It's really funny as well, so it might give you some inspiration. Expressive language for imagery, we want it to be descriptive. In this one here by Pi Corbett, it didn't just say she put me in the sharpener and then I was short. It says she spun my head around, shaved me down to the finest of points, stripped me of my wooden coat. So it's a very descriptive and expressive way. It's emotive about telling us about something very basic that's happened. And then this one is the same as our last unit. Just keep an eye on those contractive forms, and also your use of passive voice and active voice. Remember, if you are a bit stuck on passive voice, it's like a sentence you would say usually, but the other way around. So rather than Jake kicked the ball, it would be the ball was kicked by Jake. And there's lots of examples of that online, so you could add a little bit of that in here if you feel like doing so. Okay, so this is our first one, and I am going to open myself a new document, and I'm going to think about what I'm going to use. So this one's all about a pencil, and I want to use something different. So I think I'm going to do mine about a whiteboard pen. We all know the woes of the whiteboard pen. So my life as a whiteboard pen. Right, I'm going to go back to this one, and I'm just going to have a look again. So when I say about the syllables, it's thinking about almost the beats in each line. You don't have to do this. This is just kind of a guide for me to make a start. So the nightmare, that's 3, began, 5, as she, 6, 7, turned, 8, me, 9, upside, that's 11, 12, down. So it's like tapping. The nightmare began as she turned me upside down. It's that kind of tapping. So there's 12. You don't have to do this. It's just an idea. So there are 12 syllables. I might not even use 12, but that's just giving me a guide. So let's go back to this one. The nightmare began as she turned me upside down. So I'm going to think now about the life of a whiteboard pen. Hopefully you guys would have had a bit of a plan by this point. So when I think about whiteboard pens in the classroom, from a teacher's point of view, they are the bane of my life because they are often left with no lids. They run out. They're used to draw various animals and pictures on the board when we should be doing maths. So these things are probably really frustrating in the eyes of a pen. Okay, so we want to introduce the first part of it. So when the nightmare began. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to put together my first verse. I'm going to have a little bit of thinking time now. And then I'm going to put a second video up to just show you all about my first verse and how I got to that point. So tune back in and see if it's useful for you.